Laws on buying and carrying acid are to be reviewed by the government following a spate of attacks which took place in London on Thursday night. 5 people had corrosive liquid thrown at them, including one man who is said to have suffered life-changing injuries. 2 teenage boys aged 15 and 16 remain in custody on suspicion of robbery and grievous bodily harm with intent. Andy Moore's report contains flashing images, and I have to stress that you may find some scenes distressing.
Where's it hurting, mate? Your eyes? We need to try and get water in your eyes.
In the aftermath of the first attack, police doused the victim with water. He was protected by his helmet and lucky to escape with only minor injuries. But even so, it was a terrifying experience.
I took off my helmet and I was just screaming for help because it's getting dry, and as much as it's getting dry, it's burning. So I was just screaming for water, just screaming for help. I was just knocking all the windows for the car windows.
Another moped rider attacked at this location was not so lucky. He has life-changing injuries to his face. The Shadow Home Secretary called the attacks horrific and barbaric. She's calling for tighter controls.
Nobody in their own home needs pure sulphuric acid. There are different alternatives for just cleaning your drains. No one should be able to buy sulphuric acid unless they're a builder or a workman who needs it in the course of their profession, and they should have to have a licence.
The government says it's working with the police to see what more can be done to combat the growing menace of acid attacks. Andy Moore, BBC News.
Well, we can cross over live to Birmingham. Via webcam, we're joined by Errol Lawson, a former gang member, now a church minister and author. Thank you very much for your time. Of course, we've got MPs who will be debating these attacks on Monday, calls for laws to be toughened. Is that the direction that we should be going in?
It's a part of the problem. It's a part of the solution, but it's not the only thing. Listen, my thing is this, right? These incidents are indicative of a social cancer almost. We've somehow along the way, our young people have lost their moral compass. They've lost their sense of right or wrong. And the brazenness of this attack should alert us to the reality that we need to start engaging in conversation with our young people, with our parents, in schools, helping them to unpack and understand their moral compass. We've somehow lost the way.
Errol, you were a gang member. You are now helping people come through that kind of activity. What do you do? Why do people feel that it is okay to go out with this intent to cause so much harm?
It's crazy. Listen, we work in schools up and down the country, mentoring students, teachers, parents, and we see the same thing over and over again. This generation that we're in now, their sense of right or wrong is different than any generation gone before them. And if we don't do something about it, it's no different than knife crime or gun crime. We're seeing these things increase all over the country. It's not a black issue, it's not a white issue. It's a youth culture issue that we're dealing with, and the message that we're sending to them is, I was saying to your reporter earlier, you look at the Mayweather and McGregor stuff that's happening, and we're saying to our young people, this is what's right, aggression, violence, and all these different things. We're highlighting these things as standards of normal in our society, and then when we see these things now, we're surprised. And so we've somehow got to get under this, get under the root of this thing. The acid attacks are just the fruit, really, and we need to get to the root of what's in the mindset and the psyche of our young people across cultures. This is across cultures. It's got to be understood. This is across cultures, and get into how we can have them to think differently about what's right, what's wrong, what's, you know.
Errol, just let me, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. We'll talk about Martin Luther King in a moment because he has such a strong message. But in terms of, isn't it just very easy to say that the young people today, we hear this every time, young people today are worse than they were in my time, for example. That's just an easy excuse, isn't it?
Well, I mean, the evidence is there. Do you know what I mean? The evidence is there. What we do know is that there are more single-parent families than ever before. There are more young people who are growing up in homes where they're struggling to even have the basics. And so with all these things in our society, Martin Luther King gave a talk once about rediscovering our lost values. And it's so relevant now, I think, values of respect, values of do unto others as you do unto yourself, values of your love thy neighbor as yourself. These things are not in the mindset, and they're not in our youth culture. I mean, if you don't understand that and you realize that, then we're going down a deep and dark, slippery path, unfortunately. Things will only get worse.
Errol, I'm just picking you up on one of those points. I came from a single-parent family, and I didn't feel the need to walk around with knives or acid, for that matter. I think it's just an easy way of making excuses. But you were a gang member. What goes through somebody's mind that they feel the need to go out armed? What is the thinking there? It's really difficult to understand this.
I know, I can appreciate that. You see, there are those, I grew up with a single-parent family, and I went off the rails, right? And there were those who were just similar age as me with single-parent families who didn't go off the rails because they had great people around them, a support structure that could keep them focused, support them, keep them on track. These kids are in communities where that isn't happening. Their communities are broken, their homes are broken, and they say birds of a feather flock together, right? And so when someone gets into a place in their mindset where they feel excluded from society, they feel as though there's nothing else to do, nothing else to gain from being a decent human being. They get to a place where their moral compass is completely broken, and they'll do anything to anyone for any reason if they feel like it's got some benefit to them. And that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. And so should we punish? Of course we should punish. But we have to get and have the conversation about why we've gotten to the place we're in and why our young people are feeling the way they are, doing what they're doing. And I say it's not a community, it's across communities all over the country. We're seeing the same thing happen. This is just the fruit of it, man. We've got to get to the root.
Errol, so why is this happening? What is the root of this cause?
Well, I'm going to say the spiritual person now, there are spiritual principles and values that we need to teach our young people. And does it root in love, self-worth and respect? Yes, all those things. But we're seeing these communities that are disenfranchised, that are not connected into mainstream society, and we're leaving them out there on the fringes, not supporting, not engaging with them as best as we could, I believe. And instead, we're showing them, like I said, the Conor McGregor, whether it's through music or media, they're seeing these other messages. And, companies are profiting, honestly, companies are profiting off the way that these young people think and live, whether music industry, media, whatever it might be. And if we're not going to get under it and discuss these things that create the environment that our kids are creating and are living in, then we're just kind of really going around in circles, to be honest with you.
Errol, it's been fascinating to speak to you. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences and also the work that you're doing. Errol Lawson, their church minister, former gang member. Thank you.
Thank you.